Welcome into the official Jets podcast.
I eat, breathe, and sleep the New York Jets, my team.
He knows what it means to wear the green and white.
That is a tightrope walk across Niagara Falls. That's hard to do.
The official Jets podcast is presented by Kendra Scott, the jewelry company that's shining bright and doing good. Shop game day ready jewelry styles and so much more at kendrascott.com.
DJ, so great to see you again. What is this week like for you in Indianapolis at the Combine?
It's busy, but it's fun. I've always loved this event. I loved it when I was scouting. I love it on this side. It's a great opportunity. It's a convention. You get to see all your friends around the league, which is cool. And then I always give people a hard time that don't enjoy the Combine, and they hit it with the underwear Olympics line, and this isn't. And I'm like, if you don't like watching guys run fast, then we can't be friends. Like it's fun. It's fun to watch guys run fast.
Yeah. So heading into the 2025 draft, what are the most talented position groups?
Well, I think it's defensive line. Start with defensive tackle. I had 24 guys that I have graded as potential starting defensive tackles. Last year, for frame of reference, I had 12. So I don't recall ever a year with this many guys. And it's not like you're trying to invent them, where it's like, he's 280 pounds. If he could put on 20 pounds, he's 360 pounds. He needs to lose about 30. These are a bunch of 305 to 320-pound guys that can all move. They're scheme diverse. It's excellent there in terms of the depth.
And after last year, where the quarterbacks go 6 in 12, 6 of the first 12 picks overall, what do you make of this group?
It's not last year.
No.
I think that's where you start. But I do think those two at the top, and I have it with Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. I think both those guys have a chance to be quality starters. I think there's always an importance should be placed on fit, no matter how talented you are. But I think this year more so than any that I can remember, where I think there's very specific fits for guys, and they'll have a chance to be successful. But you drop them in the wrong spot, and it's not gonna go well. And after that, I think there's some intriguing guys.
Yeah.
But it's I'm trying to think of who can vault up and be the third guy that's going to launch it. I just don't see it at this point in time.
No.
So there's still time.
So a lot of people are in the Jackson Dart corner.
He's my third quarterback. Yeah. I have him in the 40s, you know. But, there could be an opportunity for him. I thought the Senior Bowl was good, but I didn't think it was, like at Penix last year at the Senior Bowl, the way the ball jumped out of his hand, it was like, okay, he's going to move up, Bo Nix, the tape was he was so efficient, and you knew he's a great example of right fit. It's going to work, and that was Sean Payton. It couldn't have been a better fit. I think to me Jackson Dart, he does a lot of things at the line or slightly above the line, but I wouldn't say that there's one thing that just that blows you away.
What do you make of where the Jets are at, number 7 here in the draft, and they have the 42nd overall selection in the second round in a new regime with Aaron Glenn as head coach and then Darren Muji as GM?
Yeah, I think they're in an interesting spot. There's a lot of different directions that they could go. If one of those two quarterbacks is there, depending on what they can accomplish in free agency, it feels to me like more a team that's still, kind of building up, and it feels more young guy. Have a young guy option there, whether that's in, free agency. I just don't know if that's, is that Justin Fields, who's still is young when you
look
like
at 25 years old.
Yeah, for as traveled as he is, there's still growth there, and there's a lot of tools. That one would make a lot of sense to me. But then again, it's weighing him against potentially, one of those two guys being there at 7, and that's to be determined. I'd be very surprised if Cam Ward was an option, if he would be there. But you might be having that conversation of Shedeur versus Fields and having that out.
So are you in the belief that there are 3 outstanding prospects in this class, and they're all defensive guys, where you started Abdul Carter from Penn State, Travis Hunter from Colorado, who can play wide receiver as well, and then Mason Graham from Michigan?
I love Mason Graham, but I would still put a little separator there. I think those top 2 guys separate themselves. Okay. Abdul Carter, premier position, premier talent. Not going to see him do anything here this week, but it doesn't really matter to me. And then Travis Hunter with just the versatility, all the playmaking he can do. Everybody knows his story. And then Mason Graham to me is just rock solid, consistent, know exactly what I'm buying with him. But, I have Ashton Genty, grade-wise, even a tick higher than him.
So the Jets are probably not in the quarterback business this year because you got Breece Hall, you drafted a couple impressive guys
They're
last
fine
year.
there.
Yeah, Braylon Allen, Isaiah
Big
Davis,
guys.
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
What are you rooting for if you're a Jets fan at the beginning of the draft?
Well, I think if you fall in love with Shedeur Sanders, if you feel like he's the fit, then I think, you could be rooting for that, depending on what you do in free agency. It's a little bit higher than where I have him, but not unreasonable. But that's, an opportunity. For me, I want somebody. This run game stunk last year, even with all the talent they have in the running back room. So I want to help that out. That's something I think you can accomplish in this draft, whether that's, getting yourself another offensive lineman, a right tackle to throw in there, or whether that's, taking someone I think helps the run game and the pass game is Ty Warren.
How much does it come into consideration what you just said about the defensive tackles before, that this potentially could be one of the best defensive tackles classes that we've ever seen? So if you're the Jets, yes, that's one of your needs here heading into the offseason, but you might be able to get one a little bit later.
Yeah, no, I think you can look at it that way. I still think, if there's a premier player that you fall in love with, just take him, and if Mason Graham's there, I'd turn the card in and feel confident and comfortable doing that at that point in time. You also need a whole new secondary, outside of Sauce. There's a lot of guys that walking out the door. So, we'll see what that shapes up. Will Johnson, I'm intrigued by and curious by. I've never seen him in person. I want to see him move. I don't know if he's going to do anything here this week. I haven't heard yet at this point in time. But, ball skills, size, all that stuff's great. Just want to see, how can he really, really run would be my question.
What can you tell us about the safety class? Because you just said the Jets going to be looking to fortify that secondary. We don't know what's going to happen opposite Sauce Gardner, DJ Reid, obviously expiring contract. His backup, Brandon Echols, has expiring contract. And then you have multiple safeties with expiring contracts.
Yeah, I use our lads for depth charts and look at it, and I think the green is the color that they use, ironically, for free agents. And I was like, looking at the Jets the other day, I was like, oh my gosh, the secondary's all green. Outside of Sauce Gardner, there's a lot of guys, and I'm sure they'll re-sign a few of those guys and work some things out there. The safety position, I don't personally see one at this point in time that's worth where they're picking in the first round. Eamon Wari is a freak show height, weight, speed athlete. Maybe he gets into that discussion. Malachi Starks is someone I just wish made a few more plays this year, but has nickel flex, can play it up top, do a lot of different things. But not, to me, those are more 15 to the back of the first round is where those conversations start to happen.
When you're studying the draft, how much attention do you pay to the coaching staffs? Because Aaron Glenn comes in, and you got a new defensive coordinator here in Steve Wilks. You got a new offensive coordinator in Tanner Engstrand. In terms of, these are good fits for the Jets and what they're going to try to do, because we have not seen this team in action under the new regime.
Yeah, and I think also, the best coaches are going to take what they have and work around that with scheme and what they want to do. I think more so than the scheme fit, I think with AG coming in there, I think you look at what he witnessed in Detroit. Yeah. More so, to me, than any magic scheme was they got a bunch of physical, aggressive, passionate football players that matched the culture that they instituted with their head coach. And I think that's going to be something I would keep more an eye on. It's like, okay, for lack of a better word, trying to find some dogs they can kind of throw in there. And this team has some of those already, but just keep pouring them in.
Speaking of some of the dogs that Jets have already on the roster, you went to Twitter and said you wouldn't be surprised, not just talking about the Jets, you were looking at the league globally and saying there could be some extensions over the next 7 to 10 days.
Yeah, I think you're going to see that. To me, there's teams now, you have money and you have cap space, and you have a somewhat uninspiring free agent crop. So it's an opportunity now to say, okay, we've got this cash. What's the best way for us to spend it? Well, some of it's just, let's just lock up some of our young guys. Let's spread that money out. We have the space to do it right now. I just think that's a good opportunity. And, Garrett Wilson be one that I would be curious about at least having that conversation and see if we can't get something done there, because that number is not going down. It is only going up.
It feels like old news now, but what was your reaction when the Jets made it public that their intention is to part ways with the aforementioned Rodgers?
Yeah, nothing surprised me there. I think that was kind of the expectation. maybe that it was announced early, but I think that's a respect thing for someone who's had his type of career and his type of success. Let's just let it be known. You can start looking for what's next, and we'll go our separate ways. But that's why I go back to, where are they in their process? New GM, new head coach. Makes sense to me to kind of pursue a younger quarterback that kind of grow with everyone in the building.
Would you be surprised at all if the Jets, you mentioned Fields before, maybe potentially sign a free agent because they already have Tyrod Taylor in-house, who's been a bridge before. You got Jordan Travis on the roster, Adrian Martinez, but sign maybe a free agent and then draft one. Doesn't necessarily have to be in that first round.
Yeah, I think you're going to add a drafted quarterback to their mix at some point in time.
Yep.
I would be surprised if they didn't, to have someone to work with and someone to develop. So, test, see what's out there in free agency. One thing you have to offer is people talk about money. Well, there's also you can offer a starting job. So that becomes appealing. So that'll be interesting to see what they end up doing there.
You spoke about Dart before. Give me a couple other names. Quarterbacks who have intriguing skill sets that are going to be taken maybe in the second, third, fourth rounds.
Yeah, Tyler Shuck could be up there. He's someone who's big. He's 6'5". He's 230 pounds. He's older, but I don't know that that's necessarily the knock that it was previously because the guy's got a lot of reps. He's got a lot of development that's already taken place. So as a 25-year-old, I think he turns 26, I want to say, in September. But you're getting somebody who can make every single throw and who matches that division and that environment and the weather you would play in up there. So big, strong, sturdy dude. That one, will be interesting to follow. Will Howard would probably be another one. I'm curious to see him throw live. I have not seen him throw live. The only question I had just pure top-end velocity and arm strength. But, the guy went on an incredible run there in the postseason for Ohio State.
What do you think is going to happen with Jalen Milroe?
Fascinating, man. I talked about this. I don't remember if it was on a conference call or in a tweet or whatever, but I was talking to
You're everywhere.
I was talking to a baseball GM. I love baseball, and we were talking about their scouting scale and how they go, 40, 45, 50, 55, all the way up to 80, and 80 is the highest, tool. So you would say somebody's, got an 80 hitter, he's 80 fielder, whatever. And I said, if you were to take every skill set of a quarterback, in terms of the accuracy, pocket feel, vision, processing, all these different things, his athleticism is an 80. Like Jalen Milroe, of all the quarterbacks, nobody has an 80 trait. He's the only quarterback that has an 80 trait. Now, it's him as a runner and his athleticism, but man, that's... You've got something there to work with from the start. He has got a special ability as a runner. Now, you got a lot of work to develop him as a passer, but that's nothing to dismiss.
And somebody's going to take that chance and try to develop this kid because he is a special athlete.
He's going to go on day 2 would be my expectation.
How about Kyle McCord? He transferred from Ohio State to Syracuse, has a big year. What's his potential in terms of his stock being elevated here? He
reminds me of Kirk Cousins a little bit when Kirk was coming out of college. Just like he makes some big throws. He's got enough size. Everything you hear about him from an intangible standpoint, excellent. There's a couple brain cramp moments with him where you're like, gosh, what was he doing here? Yep. But he doesn't lose his stinger. He's very aggressive with how he plays. And the year they had, man,
10 wins.
That's a feather in his cap to be able to sell the teams, turn that around like that.
All right, so we're going to end with this. This is called Make Your Case.
Okay.
I have a series of cards here. These are prospects that could be drafted by the Jets or any team, but you can pick one card and then tell me why this prospect makes sense for the Jets.
All right, I'm gonna go. I'll go to the bottom shelf here. I'll see. This is Tyler Warren.
Oh, Tyler Warren. How about that?
This is an easy one. This may have been rigged. I'm not gonna. I want to be truthful and honest with the people. I love Tyler Warren, and I just think when you look at tight ends, I always think about the facility, and you have your meeting room set up, and I always know in the quarterback room there's some tight ends that aren't very popular, can't get open, can't make plays. Quarterbacks don't love him. There's other tight ends, the running back room. I hate this tight end. He can't seal the edge. I'm getting hit in the back every single time I run because he can't block anybody. Tyler Warren's going to be popular in both those rooms.
Yeah.
He can go make plays down the field for your quarterback in the red zone, that big frame and target and wall guys off. And then also in the running back room, like, oh my gosh, let's run to the right, let's run behind him. He can move people in the run game. So this is a run game, as we've mentioned with the Jets. There's too much talent in the backfield for them not to be better than they are. This is like playing with an extra offensive lineman out there.
Yeah, you did a lot of study on the Jets. I know in the lead up in the last mock draft, and you said that, hey, this guy would help the Jets offensively, not just in the pass game, but in the run game.
Absolutely.
Yeah. DJ, always great seeing you. I appreciate you coming by the table here once again at the NFL Combine. How many is this for you now?
Combine-wise, my first combine was 2003.
Oh, damn.
So, no. My first combine was 2002. I actually came before I even got hired by the Ravens. I interned for them in 2002.
So I think this is 23 now.
23? Good.
23.
Getting old, man.
Thanks, bro. It was great seeing you.
Good to see you.
The Official Jets podcast is presented by Kendra Scott, the jewelry company that's shining bright and doing good. Shop game day ready jewelry styles and so much more at kendrascott.com.
Jordan, great seeing you here at the Indianapolis NFL Combine. I got to start off with this. Is this defensive line class as good as most of the pundits like yourself is saying?
Yeah, absolutely. This is the best defensive line class since 2019.
Okay.
And if you remember, that class had names like Nick Bosa, Dexter Lawrence, Christian Wilkins, Brian Burns, Montez Sweat. The list goes on and on of players that went in round one of that draft. And I believe we could get as many as 10 to 12 defensive linemen drafted in the first round. And I believe the Jets could be in contention as one of those numbers in the first round.
Okay. Defensive tackle.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen it this loaded in terms of frontline depth and then also value at the back end of the draft? When's the last time you saw anything like this?
Really since that 2019 class.
Okay,
that's
so
really, yeah, that's really the last time we've seen a defensive tackle class really from start to finish that's been as loaded as this year's group. And like I said, I think we could get as many as probably 6 or 7 that could go in the first round. That number would not be surprising at all.
When is it too rich for a team to take a defensive tackle?
I mean, for this year's class, I will be comfortable taking Mason Graham at the top of this year's draft. As a top 5 pick, I will be comfortable taking him in that range. I think he's a franchise-altering type of defensive tackle.
If you're the Jets and Graham's there at 7.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you run the card in. You don't even think twice about it. I don't even think he's going to be there for them at 7.
Do you view the top of this draft like this, that you got Travis Hunter, you got Abdul Carter, and you got Graham? Are those the top 3 overall prospects in your mind?
Those are your 3 blue-chip guys in this year's draft class. After that, it gets a little bit touchy as far as who could be that next guy off of the board, considering if the quarterbacks don't go at the top of the draft. But as far as the blue-chip guys, those are your 3. And that's where I think the run on defensive line could happen just because of the lack of those blue-chip type of guys at the top of this year's class.
If you're the Jets, I know it's early, and we haven't even seen these guys test. They got pro days coming up. They got an interview, and we got a lot of time before now in April. But what is a fortuitous look at the top of the draft if you're sitting there at 7?
So Mason Graham, we just talked about him. But just talking about defensive linemen, somebody like Shamar Stewart out of Texas A&M. I think that's another name that they could find really intriguing. Then you're getting into other names, the Georgia duo of Jalen Walker, then also Michael Williams. I definitely think they could be in contention for that 7th overall pick. Those are really your names that I will be comfortable with taking at the top. And then, of course, Aaron Glenn being a defensive guy. Yeah, I think they're going to want just a clean prospect, especially whenever you're talking about the first pick of a new regime. You want somebody that's going to come in and play right away that's been productive in college.
I don't think the Jets are going to be able to get their hands on this guy, but what do you like most about Hunter?
I think he's rare. He is far and away the best player overall in this year's class to me. He's been my top player ever since September coming into the season, and it's very rare that you see a player dominate on both sides of the ball. And I've been using his comparison ever since he came into the season this year. He's Champ Bailey coming out of Georgia to me. And if you remember, Champ played, or he averaged over 100 snaps a game when he was coming out in the late 90s. He ultimately decided to play on the defensive side of the ball, and he's wearing a gold jacket now, obviously. But just the instincts, the movement ability, and then just to be able to be consistently a sudden change player on both sides of the ball, that's why I feel so confident in his evaluation.
If he is a cornerback at the next level, if you're a team, do you say, hey, listen, he is one of my best players. I'm going to get him on the field offensively because he's shown he can do it.
Yeah, so I would play him at corner full time, and then I would sprinkle him in maybe 20 to 25 plays a game at receiver, just because outside of Troy Brown during his time in New England, I've never really seen a player play full time at receiver and then go over and sprinkle in some at corner. Now, the inverse is true. I've seen more corners that go over and sprinkle in as a receiver.
Yeah.
So I just think that instance and that evidence, that's why I would feel more comfortable playing him full-time on the defensive side and then build a package around him for maybe 20 to 25 plays a game as a receiver.
The Jets have some uncertainty at the quarterback position.
Yeah.
They're parting ways with Aaron Rodgers. They got Tyrod Taylor, who was a very respected veteran in-house. Jordan Travis was on NFI last year. You got Adrian Martinez. But if you're an organization who's in year one under Darren Muji and Aaron Glenn, how are you looking to potentially address that position, whether it be free agency and or the draft?
I think they should take another late round guy, maybe day 2 or day 3, just because they should go into the season with eyes on 2026. Now, they're not going to sell that, and that's what they're doing. But I think the smart approach would just be to ride it out with Tyrod Taylor, who's a competent player at the position. He can get you through a 17-game season, and not saying that they're going to have a great record or anything like that. But in year one of a regime, you're trying to find out which players you feel comfortable with and who are the guys that long-term that you want on the roster. So with Tyrod, you know he's going to give you a competent 17 games, and I just don't think in year one they should tie themselves to a quarterback right now.
If either one, do you have your board, Jordan Reid? Do you have Cam Ward, then Shedeur?
Yeah, I do.
Then who's your third and fourth?
It would be Jackson Dart out of Ole Miss, and then Jalen Milroe out of Alabama. Those would be my next 2 quarterbacks on the board. And, you know, Dart has gotten a lot of love here lately just because of how productive he's been, how loose of a thrower he is, and he really mastered that scheme with Lane Kiffin. But the big question about him is just how well is he going to translate to the next level when he has to go to more of a progression-based scheme, being able to huddle, have to relay and execute actual play calls in the huddle too. So just the scheme questions is going to be big with him. And then with Milroe, just how consistent of a passer can he develop into?
Ward, is there any chance he gets past 3?
I would be surprised if he got past Cleveland and then also the Giants, just because those teams definitely need quarterbacks.
Sure. How about Shedeur? Is he more of a wild card?
I think 6 is his floor, the Raiders at 6. I think that's where he ultimately ends up going, just because they have a huge need at quarterback as well. And, you know, with Pete Carroll being 74 years old, I think he's going to want to answer very quickly there at quarterback just because he wants to win.
In any event that Sanders is sitting there at 7, if you're the Jets.
Yeah, I think you have to take them just because they have such a huge need at the position. And, yes, I know I said they should go into the season with Tyrod as the starter, but that was assuming that both of the quarterbacks go at the top of the board. I just don't think there's a third quarterback in this draft that's worthy of a round 1 pick right now. But if Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward is there for them at the board, I believe you absolutely take them.
And if the Jets are sitting there at 42 and a Dart or maybe potentially a Milroe still out there, you consider it there.
Yeah, I think you do, especially Dart, just because I don't think you can go wrong taking a quarterback on day 2 and day 3, just because those guys are like lottery tickets, man. That's what I call it. You never know when you can strike gold like Russell Wilson or a Dak Prescott. And let's say, you know, we don't wish injuries on anybody, but let's say Tyrod Taylor does miss some time, one of those day 2 or day 3 guys that go in there and they're productive. Now you have a Dak Prescott or a Russell Wilson situation of where you have a cheap quarterback for the future.
The Jets have north of 20 free agents. Including amongst those is Tyler Conklin. What do you make of Tyler Warren out of Penn State? And then also a tight end from Michigan who probably didn't put up the numbers that Warren did last year, but he's getting a lot of love, and maybe he could make himself quite a bit of money this week.
Yeah, I believe both of those guys are round 1 worthy picks. Now it's just a matter of, are the Jets comfortable with spending a high pick on a tight end? Do they feel like one of these guys is that special? I believe Tyler Warren is that special of a player that he's worth considering at number 7 overall.
Yeah.
And he's a very similar player to T.J. Hockenson when he was coming out of Iowa. A guy that, you know, he doesn't predicate himself on creating the ultimate separation, but he can win in so many contested situations. And, I mean, we saw it during his career last year at Penn State, the way he was able to just sky and tower over guys. I think he's an underrated athlete, especially after the catch. And the Jets have a huge need as far as a weapon outside of Garrett Wilson.
Yeah.
They need that second target, and Tyler Warren would definitely bring that to the table.
What the name's escaping me right now. What about the Michigan tight end?
Colston Loveland.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's another, a bit of a different type. He's more so of your big flexed out wide receiver. Not really competent as a run blocker.
Yeah.
That's not really where you want him. That's not really his wheelhouse. But he's just a big wide receiver. He's really dynamic. And now you're talking about somebody that really can complement, Garrett Wilson. I definitely think he brings that to the forefront. You can use him in line. You can flex him out in the slot. You can put him out wide. There's so many different things that you can get creative with him.
Was Bowers well, he was an anomaly last year, no doubt about that. But his production, what do you think? How does that reverberate around NFL draft rooms?
Yeah, I mean, everybody knows that Michigan, they didn't have great quarterback play last year. And, he was a bit banged up last year, too. And you could tell it on tape with him. But, you have to really take that into account with him. And he still put up decent numbers last year. But with him, you still see him getting open on tape. But sometimes a guy would sky the ball over his head. So it really doesn't matter as far as the production. But you still see that guy getting open.
Okay, uncertainty for the Jets in safety position and the defensive backfield as well. Sauce Gardner, we know he's going to be man on one side. DJ Reid, he's going to test free agency. Brandon Echols, who was the backup on the outside, he's also unrestricted free agent. And then you're talking about the safety spot as well. The Jets have multiple guys with expiring deals. Who has your eye in terms of maybe the safety spot and also maybe a cornerback? Potentially he could start on the outside.
Yeah, well, there's a cluster of guys in the second round right now, and the great thing about the Combine is this is where a certain guy in a cluster can really differentiate themselves. So I'm looking at somebody like Azariah Thomas out of Florida State, Maxwell Hairston out of Kentucky. And there's plenty of other names in this year's draft class. Savon Revel out of ECU is another. All those guys are really in that same cluster of late first, early second round guys, potentially mid-second round guys as well. Benjamin Morrison out of Notre Dame is another name that I didn't even mention that are in that same cluster of where you're just waiting to see the testing numbers or the pro day numbers to really unravel that cluster to see who potentially could be in the running for a CB2 for the Jets. And then at safety, one guy I love that I think would fit perfect in Aaron Glenn's defense is Andrew Makuba. Out of Texas, who, originally went to Clemson his first few years of his career, had the breakout freshman season, battled some injuries after that, and really reinvented himself once he went back home to Texas.
It's going to be fun. What is this week like for you? A guy who is constantly in demand. You're talking to every team, and then you're doing your stuff for ESPN as well. What is this entire experience like?
This is where all the hard work goes into, all the prep, all the homework, traveling to games, seeing these guys. You just get to let it all out. And I'm like a kid at the candy store talking to you guys and informing you about all these guys.
I love it. So speaking of kid in the candy store, make your case.
Oh, man, here we go.
So we got a series of prospects. You're going to pick one, and you're going to tell us why this prospect would be a good fit for the Jets.
Here we go. I'm going to go right in the middle.
Who we got here?
Here we go. Oh, we got a quarterback.
Oh, Shedeur Sanders, huh?
I like it. The ball placement, the accuracy, the poise that he plays with. But one thing I love about Shedeur and his fit in New York is that he's always been in the limelight. So he's never going to back away from the stage or the bright lights of New York. We're talking about somebody that is the son of Deion Sanders, arguably the greatest athlete that's graced the planet. So he's always been in those pressurized situations. So he would welcome the limelight of New York, but also they have a huge need at quarterback right now. So let's say Shedeur Sanders does somehow miraculously fall to number 7 overall. He'll be a great pick.
So Jordan Reid says prime time and prime time wouldn't be that bad, but don't get your hopes up because you're saying the floor is probably the Raiders at 6, right?
Yeah, right before.
It was great seeing you. Enjoy the week. Thank you so much.
Thank you as always.